Well, today we continue our series of sermons we started last week on just lesser-known heroes in the Bible. And we're going to look at today a person named Rahab. Okay? Rahab, to put it bluntly, was one of those, I think on the surface, that unsavory individual that you would not look for good things to come from. She was, after all, a prostitute. And you wouldn't think she'd be somebody that would become a hero for God. But we're going to discover that that is exactly the case today. John MacArthur, in one of his books entitled 12 Women, Significant Women in Faith, he includes Rahab, and he says in the chapter on her, it's a horrible life redeemed. I think that's a good way to say it, and as we go through the message today, you're going to see that's exactly what her life was. It was not a good life, but God redeemed her in the process. Big idea of the message today, and this is the thing, grasp when we look at her story, and this is for all of us. God is gracious toward an active faith. He just is. It's important to believe in Him, but when that faith is really active, and it shows that it's really active, God really reaches out and touches us with His grace, and some great things can be done. Now, Rahab's story is this, that being a prostitute, she was an immoral woman, living in an immoral culture. She lived in Jericho. Jericho was a big fortress. I mean, walls all around that city. It was a big place. And she lived in the high rent district. Now, let me explain that a little bit. People lived all throughout the city, Jericho. She lived in one of those places that was on the wall. You could just literally look out a window from her vantage point. She could see all the way down on the outside of the wall. If she wanted to, she could let her rope down, and she could go down that wall if she wanted to. This was not a common place for just anybody to live. It was people who were of substance, financially, if you will, who lived on the wall. So what it suggests to me is that she was a prostitute who did very well in her work. Some have tried to water that down a little bit. Said, well, maybe she's really, you know, that word prostitute, it could indicate, in the Hebrew, it could indicate that she just let men in. Okay, so then they kind of give her another title. She was like an innkeeper, because people came, like the two spies that were going to discover it. They came and they stayed at her place, so she could be viewed as an innkeeper. The only problem with this, every time that word is used in the original language of the Hebrew, it always means prostitute, a harlot. If you go to the New Testament, we will go there a little bit later on and see her name there. But each time they mention her there, it is always Rahab the prostitute. So I looked that word up in the Greek. You know what it is? It's pronounced porne, part of that word grouping from which we get our word pornography. And it always means she was a prostitute. So get that established. How can a person who's a prostitute really make a difference for God? Well, we learn in the book of Joshua that as the Israelites were coming to the promised land, they crossed the Jordan River. The first place they were going to come to was this place called Jericho. And Jericho was, as I said, a big fortress, well protected. How are you going to take this place down? It's up to God. He's going to decide how to do that. But it still would be prudent if Joshua sent some spies in. They'd always spy out the place where they're going to conquer. So he sends in 2 spies, just 2. He said, go in there to Jericho and see what we got to deal with. Take a look at the walls, take a look at the city, see the fortification they have, the protection with troops that they have. Just spy it all out and then come back and report. I don't think the nation of Israel really knew that this was going on. I think it was just some Joshua says, let's do this just very quietly, get back to me, and we'll proceed from there. So the spies go in. You understand that with her being a prostitute, probably, I hate to say it this way, in good standing in the community, because she lived where she lived, she did very well with her work. She would also be somebody they would be watching from time to time. Now, a lot of times, you might think that nobody's going to pay attention to all the men that are going in her place, but sometimes when you have visitors in the city, you might pay attention where they go. And especially if you got like these 2 spies, they don't really look maybe like quite everybody else who lives in the city. These are Israelites. I don't know how they were dressed exactly, but bottom line is this, is they were spied very quickly by some of the king's men. But when the king heard about this, he was going to look into it much closer because he couldn't have spies in the city and about to take down the city. So if she, being who she is holding spies, she could turn those spies over. You know what would happen in that case? She could get a lot of money. Kings would give rewards for those who were turning in spies. But she doesn't do that. She takes a risk because if they catch her aiding and abetting these spies, she could have her life taken from her. Why the risk? Think about the risk. If I get caught, I die. That's a big risk. A few lessons we're going to learn about Rahab would include these, though. First, the faith of Rahab motivated her to act on her faith. What faith does she have? I mean, she lives doing what she's doing in the city there. She's done this for quite a while. What faith, though, does she have? Well, it was a faith that put herself in harm's way. She had come to realize, here's the faith, she had come to realize God's power with the Israelites. And this was not anything she'd ever seen or heard about with all the gods and different kinds of deities they worshipped in her pagan culture. She'd never seen anything as real as this, as significant as this. So much so that we could look at Joshua chapter 2, verse 9, just the first verse, the first part of that verse says, and she's talking to the spies, I know the Lord has given you this land. I know the Lord, she recognizes this is God, like I've not known God before. He's given you this land, you and your nation out there. I recognize this. Now let's just back up for a little bit of context here, verses 2 through 8. We won't read those at this time, just simply tell you what was going on. The spies came in, they were spying out the territory. They found her somehow and went to her place, and she was open to protecting them because she was watching the Israelites coming. And when she talks to the spies, she says, listen, you know, this thing about the Israelites coming into the promised land, and they're coming to Jericho is the first place they're going to have to take down. I have heard all about what they have done. I have heard about how the Egyptians sent their army after the Israelites when the Israelites were told you could go about, who knows, 1 million or more people leave Egypt. And this great nation is moving out and then heading out towards the Red Sea or across the Red Sea, and they're heading for a place called the Promised Land. Pharaoh changes his mind. Rahab had heard about this, that these people moved out and came to the Red Sea, and here comes Pharaoh's army, and they're going to get swallowed up by Pharaoh's army. No, that's not what happened. God parted the waters, the Red Sea. The nation of Israel passed over on dry ground. Here comes the army right in behind them, and the waters come back out over and completely obliterate the armies of Egypt. She'd heard about that. She'd heard about other conquests that were made as they were moving towards the Promised Land, out across the Jordan River. And here stands the city of Jericho. She says, I don't think I want to trifle with this God. I don't want to mess with his people. So she put herself in harm's way because of what she had come to believe about God and what he was doing through these people. But she also believed in the God of the Israelites, and she acted on her faith. Not just she believed when things were happening, but she came to believe in the God of the Israelites and acted on her faith. Now, her faith was not a stagnant thing. It's one thing to say, well, I believe this must be the God who created everything. He's a powerful God. Now, I see some things she's doing with his people right there, but what are you going to do with that? She put her faith into action, saying, I want to be a part of this, and I need to take steps to find out how to do this thing. So whatever God opens up for me, I'm going to step into that door, and I'm going to see what God has for me there. Her faith was not stagnant. When we look over at the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, don't look on the screen because I didn't put it on the screen, so just listen to what it says. Hebrews 11, verse 31 says, it was by faith that Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed with the people in her city who refused to obey God, for she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. Rahab, what do you call her? The prostitute? Okay, she gets called that quite a bit. Old Testament, New Testament, it's always Rahab and identify her as the prostitute. James does the same thing, but you notice before we leave Hebrews, the big issue there is faith. Look at what her faith does. read about it in the Old Testament. She's mentioned in the 11th chapter of Hebrews. You know what the 11th chapter of Hebrews is? Some people call it the Hall of Faith. Not the Hall of Fame, but the Hall of Faith. Great names like Abraham and Moses. These great names of the Old Testament. These people are mentioned for having great faith. She's mentioned in that context. Her magnificent faith that she had in God. But what did it motivate her to do? Well, you go over to James chapter 2. He writes about faith and works working together. He says you gotta have both. You gotta have this faith that says I believe in God, I believe what He can do, but I gotta show that my faith is real. I do that by doing the things He wants me to do, that He tells me to do. Faith and works operate together. And so in the second chapter of James, that's a big discussion that takes place. It comes down to verse number 23 or 25. It says Rahab the prostitute, boy, to be identified that way all the way through the Bible. Rahab the prostitute is another example. She was shown to be right with God by her actions when she hid those messengers and sent them safely away by a different road. That's interesting just to look at that. She hid those messengers, those spies, and then sent them away by a different road. Let me pause for just a second. What she did was when those spies came in, and the king released his guys to go up there and find those men, she says, they haven't seen them. She had them hidden up on the roof. They were hiding under some bundles of flax that they would make rope or something like that out of. They were hiding under that. These guys made careful search of everything, but apparently didn't look underneath those bundles of flax, because that's where the spies were hiding. And then she said, I think when they left, though, if I understand it right, I think they went that direction. She was about to tell the spies when she let them go, you go this direction. So the pursuers were not going to catch up with the spies because they were sent in a completely different direction. It's interesting that somebody asked me about this, and they knew I was going to preach about this today, and they said, she lied to those guys. She lied. I mean, there was a pattern of lies that she gave to those guys. How can that be blessed by God? Well, you know, virtually every commentary I read said this: don't judge her too harshly. What does she know that the Israelites know? All she knows is there's this big God out there. He's got this nation. He's doing some fabulous things and some scary things. Well, I want to be a part of all that. I don't know how to be a part of it, but I got a feeling like protecting these spies is going to be part of this. I have a chance to do something good for God, for that nation out there, even if I have to lie. Sometimes you just got to tell a lie. I don't know if that's true or not. But you find it in the Bible. Who else lied, guys? Gals, who else lied? Abraham lied, didn't he? Isaac lied. You know what they did? These women are my wives. These are not my wives, they're my sister. Why did they lie? Because they thought if they identified the women, like Isaac and Abraham had these wives, if they identified them as their wives, well, wherever they were in a foreign land, they just simply killed those guys off so they could have their wives, because they were good-looking women. They lied. Here's the point. God can still work through the problems we have when we create for ourselves. He can still do it. Abraham was a man of faith. Isaac was a man of faith. And they were walking with God, and they still lied. This woman hasn't even had a chance yet. She's just believing based on what evidence she can see out there. Give her a break on this a little bit. I'm simply saying this. I'm not justifying lying. I'm not justifying anything that people did those times. That was not what God really wanted to do. Here's the point. The issue here is about her faith. It's about her faith, what she really believed. I get a little bit edgy at times when I hear people who, somebody just becomes a Christian, and they have certain habits that they do, like maybe the language isn't quite up to snuff for a Christian. Maybe they do some things in the bar that they shouldn't do quite up to snuff for a Christian. They're brand new to the faith. And instead of working with them, helping them to get stronger in the faith, we condemn them. Okay? Jamie baptized somebody here about a month ago. I want you to know I heard them saying some stuff in a ball game and playing in a softball game. They said some stuff that was really bad language. Well, you know, get your pulled aside and say, hey, let's talk about that a little bit. I use that illustration because So people had pulled me aside when I was a young man. You clean your language up a little bit. One guy even told me, he says, you know, when you use bad language like you're using, all that shows you've got bad vocabulary. That insulted me. I thought I had a good vocabulary. That insulted me, so I began to quit using that language less and less. This woman was doing something she thought could help the Israelite nation. She's been a part of being available to God. Give her that. Give her that. Now the rest of it is God can still work with us, depending on it. You know, it doesn't matter what the situation is. As one of my professors used to say, God works with people, warts and all. Look in the Old Testament. Warts and all. They don't look too good sometimes, but God still used Abraham, did he? Still used Isaac, still used a lot of people. He used Rahab as well. She believed in the God of the Israelites. Now, I didn't finish James chapter 2. I read that thing, just identified her, Rahab, the prostitute, what she did. Then there's a connection to all of us. Look at verse 26. It says, just as the body is dead without breath, so also faith is dead without good works. Good works don't save you. Faith and grace is what saves us. Good works, you know what it does? It shows that we are real. We're genuine people. That's what it shows. Anybody can say they're a Christian. Anybody can say what they want about God or Jesus. But if it doesn't show any consistency with the things you say or do, what's it really saying to the rest of the world? And James just calls us out, just saying, hey, faith without works is dead. It doesn't mean a whole lot. Here's a woman who was willing to put her life on the line to save these men because she was trying to do something in concert with the nation of Israel, responding to the God that they worship. Faith without works is dead. How many people sit on their faith? You couldn't tell if they were Christians or not. There's an old illustration. I mean, I heard this probably when I was a kid. And it's been around for a long time, but I haven't heard it for a while, so I'm going to use it because maybe I've heard it for a while, right? What if they started arresting Christians? What if that happened? Like it has in other parts of the world. What if they started arresting Christians because somebody said they were a Christian? Somebody postulated this. What if they arrested Christians and threw you in jail and brought you to a trial, but there would be enough evidence to prove that you should be convicted? Would there be enough evidence to convict you? All they can do is look at what you say and what you do. But if we're not saying or doing much of anything, it doesn't really show very much about our faith, does it? So Rahab was a person who, she was motivated to act on her faith. She believed, but that she acted on her faith. And then there's another aspect in the story that comes out and says the faith of Rahab led her to confess that faith in God. It wasn't just, I believe, but she was willing to confess that faith. Listen to what she said when she did confess. We went to Joshua again, chapter 2. Let's take a look at second half of verse 9 down through verse 11. She's talking to the spies, and she says, I know the Lord's given you this land, she told them. We are all afraid of you. Everyone in the land is living in terror, for we have heard how the Lord made a dry path for you through the Red Sea when you left Egypt. And we know what you did to Sihon and Og, the two Amorite kings east of the Jordan River, whose people are completely destroyed. Now, no wonder our hearts have melted in fear. No one had the courage to fight after hearing these such things. For the Lord your God is supreme God of heaven and above and also the earth below. Listen to that stuff she's saying. I know, I've heard all about the stuff that happened in Egypt. I know about what happened to the Egyptian army. I know what happened to anybody who stands in their way, this Israelite nation. I've seen it all. And I know then, as a result, that God has given you this land. You know what she's really saying? First and foremost, part of her confession is this: there is a God. There is a God. In a time when people around here, in the United States particularly, say, there is no God. When the time comes that they're challenging that everywhere we look, in our educational institutions, in our communities, in the parks that we have, in the court system, everything that we got here, they're challenging the existence of God. And with that goes his way. Rahab is stepping up and saying, there is a God. The evidence is all around us. Well, Paul would agree with her if you go to the book of Romans, and you look at Romans chapter 1. Take a look at verse number 20. Paul says this, "For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his external power and divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God." If there's nothing else, look up in the sky, look around you, see the order, see the design behind it all. How could you conclude anything else other than there has to be a God who's responsible for that? I could point to about anything and say, that thing exists because somewhere along the line there was a designer who designed it and then that thing happened. They made it. The same thing with creation, with the universe. There's a design behind it. And if there is, there's got to be a designer. It just makes sense. You know, when I really think about it that way, it takes more faith to believe there's not a God than there is a God. That all this stuff just happened. Design means there's a designer behind it. There's much more to that argument, but I don't have, at this point, this is not the purpose of what I'm saying here. I'm just simply saying I agree with what the Bible says. The evidence is there. You can choose to reject it if you want, but the evidence is there. What God had done in Rahab's neighborhood had many witnesses. She could look around and see all this stuff around her, but then she sees this mighty nation moving her way. She sees what she thinks is a God behind it all, and she says, I gotta get on that team over there. Could she do that? Simply, what she had to do was join him. If you believe in this God and you want to be on his side, join him. Now, going back to the second chapter of Joshua, after she finishes making her confession of what she believes about God, then she says, you know what? When the time comes that you take this city, will you be so kind as to spare me and the rest of my family? And the spies look there and says, you've got it. You've been kind to us. You've saved, you spared us and everything. And when we come in, so long as you don't ever turn on us, we will spare you and your family. So she's wanting to leave Jericho. She wants to be a part of this movement that's coming her way, be a part of those people. You know, in the book of Romans, it says all of us need to do something when we come to a relationship with God. We understand that he's out there and wants to have this relationship. We need to confess who he is. And by confessing who he is, we then are saved, just like Rahab could be saved because of her confession. As a matter of fact, in Romans chapter 10, verse number 9 says, if you openly declare that Jesus, now he's involved in it, it's not just God, but the Savior of the world. If you declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God, and it is by openly declaring your faith that you are saved. It mentions the word saved there twice, but it's connected with confessing what you believe about God. You can be saved. Rahab was confessing the faith of God and acting on that faith. She really wanted, I think, she really wanted to join this movement of Israelites in the God that they worship. That's what people do when they come into a stark relationship that I can't deny it anymore. There is this God, there's this Jesus Christ, there is this salvation plan that he's put in front of us. What am I going to do with that? Well, you've got to confess that. You've got to act upon that. Now, in the first service, there was a young man who was present. He and his fiancée had been coming to church here for about a little over a month. I've known him for several years. Got to meet him several years ago. And every time we see each other, we usually talk sports or something. He's a pretty good athlete. He always talks sports. But there's been a few other conversations. All of a sudden, he starts showing up at church here. So he calls me up on Monday morning. Tim, are you busy this afternoon? Do you have any time to talk this afternoon? It sounded rather urgent. And I said, well, yeah. I just need to talk to you. Oh, boy, something going on here. You know, I don't know. You don't know what you're going to get in those kind of phone calls. So I said, yeah, I'll be around. You know, so he came by that afternoon. He said, we've been coming to church. He said, I really like it. He said, you know, I wasn't really raised in the church, so to speak. He said, it started out that way, but some things happened, and we ended up not going to church as a family and everything. He said, I told my folks I've been going to church, and we've been going over Clover Road and everything, and they said, oh, that's good. He said, we got to talk a little bit. He said, I found out something. I've never been baptized. I kind of looked at him and I said, that sounds like it's pretty urgent that you really need to settle this matter. He said, I do. He said, look, I'm a believer. He went right down the line, just like when you teach somebody, He said, I'm a believer. And I want to repent of my life. I want to change the direction of my life. Come on, I understand what that means. He says, and I want to confess Jesus as a Savior. I know that's all part of it too, isn't it? I said, yeah. He said, but I never knew. So I asked my mother if I had been baptized. I thought to myself, he had to ask me to be baptized. Probably. I had a question behind that anyway, But he said, but she told me I had never been baptized. He says, can I get that done? And I thought, I got an Ethiopian right here. Acts chapter 8, can we do it right now? I said, when would you like to do this? He says, as soon as possible. Well, here's what happened. He said, let me talk to my fiance because I'd like for her to be present too. I said, well, it'll take me 45 minutes to fill the tank anyway, I can remember one other man, I'm not going to say his name right now, that we had this discussion for lunch. He says, when can we get baptized? I said, well, anytime. I said, I just have to fill the tank. I need a little lead time on that. He said, how long is it going to take to fill the tank? I said, 45 minutes. He said, I'll meet you there at the church an hour. I can go over there, It's kind of like what happens sometimes. People they realize I've got to do something. I've got this faith. I'm willing to confess what I have to confess. I've got to follow through all the way. I said, each one of those things are important. Faith, confession, repentance, baptism, they're all important. He wanted to complete the deal. So Friday afternoon, he came over there and completed the deal. And I looked at him in the audience. He was sitting right back over there this morning like that. I said, did I tell that okay? He went like that. He's happy and thrilled about his decision, but he wants to move on it. Because he wants to be a part of the family of God. He told me that. I want to be a part of this church. And his fiancée does very much so too. Well, you got this business of the faith of Rahab motivated her to act on her faith. How important that is for all of us. And the faith of Rahab led her to confess that faith in God. She did that. If we're followers of Christ, we do that when we know that. We confess it. We follow through with what we need to do. And the third thing that's important in this thing about Rahab is this. The faith of Rahab resulted in God's grace toward her. God is gracious in his promises. Now, the spies were the ones that made the promise. You hold up your end of the bargain, I promise you and your family live when we come through. Now, they made that promise, but it was not inconsistent with what God was already doing in her heart. I believe that wholeheartedly. He had no problem with the promise that the spies made. Other places, if you recall, God says, once you go in, I want you to destroy everything. Everything and everybody. But in Jericho, there was an exception. Because of what? Because of her faith. The faith that she confessed. The faith that said, I want to be a part of what God is doing through these people. And God is gracious in his promises. If we pop over to the book of Joshua, and we look at chapter 6, when they actually make their move on Joshua, you know the story, they march around the city and everything like that, and they all shouted, the walls keep tumbling down. Well, everybody died in there except for, you know who. Here it comes. 17th verse of Joshua chapter 6. Jericho and everything in it must be completely destroyed as an offering to the Lord. Only Rahab, the prostitute, she's identified by that all the time. Only Rahab, the prostitute, and the others in her house will be spared, for she protected the spies. The men who had, this is verse 23, and it says, the men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab, her father, mother, brothers, and all her other relatives who were with her. They moved her whole family to a safe place near the camp of Israel. Now look at the last thing I want you to see. It's in verse 25. That's part of verse 25. And she, now to move before someplace near the camp of the Israelites, verse 25 says, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. She joined with this group that worshiped this God because God was gracious to her, because of the faith that she showed in him. Here's the thing about this, though, is that his grace works through all of us that way. How we come to know Jesus Christ, the grace of God just is able to work through that faith that we express in him. For you see, Rahab is more than a story in Joshua. If you check out the genealogy of Jesus, you find that over Matthew chapter 1, all these generations. So-and-so had this child had this child had this, all these different people were connected. And it's the bloodline of Christ. Look at verse number 5 from Matthew chapter 1. Solomon was the father of Boaz, parentheses, whose mother was Rahab, and it's the only time they didn't say the prostitute. Why is that significant? Well, Boaz had a son who had a son whose son was David. Boaz is the great-grandfather of King David. And there's that royal bloodline, and it leads all the way down to Jesus Christ. It's no longer Rahab the prostitute, but she became part of the Israelite nation. And a significant part that she actually became part of the lineage of Christ. Really? A prostitute? Whose life could be that drastically changed? Let me just give this thought to you who might be sitting there thinking, I don't know, but there's always going to be people in the audience who might say, but you don't know my past. You don't know what I've done. And I could probably look at you and say, yeah, but you know what? I don't care. I don't care about that past. What I care about is what is God going to do now and move your life through to the forward. That's what I care about. There's lots of people who say, I just don't get it. How God could love me. I would just say two words. God is graciously inclusive. He really is. Doesn't matter what you've done. Let me just tell you real quick. Some of you knew this man. His name was Sid Brunel. Some of his family was sitting right down here in the first service. Sid Brunel started coming to church because his kids started coming to vacation Bible school. They started coming to Sunday school and church. And then Sid started showing up with his wife and the family. It was a few years of talking to Sid about accepting Christ. He said he'd never done that. I can remember going out to the YMCA on Tuesdays at noon. We'd play racquetball. And he beat me up some fiercely at racquetball games. Sid was a pretty good athlete. We'd play, get tired, we'd come out and sit down and cool off for about 20 minutes. Just what we talked about. Talked about Jesus. We talked about what it means to accept him. And finally, just one day, I just looked and I said, Sid, what's holding you up? You know the story. You know, here's what the Bible says you need to do. What's the deal? Are you ready? I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm just not worthy for what you did for me. I understand it. He teared up when he said that to me. I understand. I'm just not worthy. That changed my focus a little bit. I had to pray about how do I respond to that kind of a thing when this guy looked at it. He says, Tim, you don't know all the things I did. You don't even know some of the places I've been in the world, what I've seen, what I've done. Well, I know he went to Vietnam. I know he was involved in combat. I've heard the stories. You guys have a hard time living with that. We kept talking, and then one day he said, I'm ready. And when that man gave his life to Christ, the past was forgotten. Who he became at that moment and moving forward was a great servant of God. All of you who knew Sid knew that he just sold out completely to Christ. He didn't get to serve very long. He had cancer. Time they detected it till the time he died was about a year. And that journey was something, just a journey of faith that he just had confidence that God was in it with him, no matter what. I remember baptizing somebody on a Sunday morning. I was coming out of the baptistry, standing down at the bottom of the baptistry at the old church was Shelley. She had tears in her eyes. I said, what's going on? She said, Sid just passed away. I looked outside. There was a window there. I looked outside. It was a beautiful March day, bright blue sky. What a day to go home. I said, that's what Sid. What a man of faith. Look at the past and said, God can take care of that. Look what my life has become. Someone said after the first service, I love that man. I look forward to seeing him again someday. But we have that hope, don't we? Because of faith that responds with God's grace, and it's said best by Paul, he condenses it all down in Ephesians chapter 2, beginning with verse 8. God saved you by his grace. When you believe, that's faith, and you can't take credit for this. It is a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for those good things we have done, so none of us can boast about it. For we are God's masterpiece, and He created us anew in Christ Jesus, so that we can do the good things He planned for us long ago. It's all been part of His plan. No matter who you are, what you've done, it's all part of His plan. So, how about you today? There may be somebody here who's thinking about that, maybe wants to talk about it a little bit more, pray about it. We'll be glad to do that with you. There's some of us here today that's saying, man, I need to take a good look at it. I know that He saved me. It's by His grace He saved me, but how responsible am I to that? How much am I giving my life in doing the good things He wants me to do? Because that's what He created me to do. We all have decisions to make. All of us do. So I want to encourage you. Nobody in this room is perfect. We all can grow. Rahab tells us, though, God can make anything possible in your life. The conclusion of the message is this. Put your faith in consistent action and fully enjoy God's grace in your life. I mentioned Hebrews 11. There's a little verse I want to leave with you today. It's in verse number 6. It says this. It is impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to Him must believe that God exists and that He rewards those who sincerely seek Him. That's a description of Rahab. That's a description of you and me. Let's pray. Father, I thank You for the story of Rahab. I'm thankful, Father, that where she was in her life was far from where she needed to be. But where she could go, she recognized would come only if she met You, was accepted by You, and accepted by Your people. Nothing has changed. All these years later, we all walk different walks and we all do things that are not particularly what You want us to do. It doesn't matter what we've done. It matters that we have faith in You and we want to change our lives. We want to be part of Your family and for You to be our God. So I pray for anyone in this room today who's considering that decision. I pray for all of us who need to look and say, okay, what am I doing? How am I living out my faith as she was willing to do? Realize there's sometimes risks we have to take, but it's worth it because there's always reward from You. So Father, I pray that You'll bless us. We draw closer to You. Follow an example that we've just looked at today. All things are possible when placed in Your hands. Pray all these things in Christ's name.